Welcome to this series on a struggle against emergency of 1975. Many call it the second freedom fight. And we have with us Mr. P. Rajan, who was with the Malayalam daily Madhubhumi, one of the first to get arrested during emergency time in Kerala. Sir, what was the situation? What was the issue which got you arrested during emergency? Not was it because you were as a journalist working in a mainline paper, especially the one which was started by the freedom fighters of earlier century.
I was the first journalist, as far as I know, to be arrested for publishing a leaflet against emergency. The leaflet
Okay.
was titled Indira's Emergency Operation.
Okay.
It discussed the situation that led to emergency, particularly the agitation led by Jayaprakash Narayan. And we said that there is absolutely no situation that warrants the imposition of democracy because an election had been conducted in Gujarat smoothly, and there was a strike also, which did not create any law and order situation. Actually, the emergency was imposed to save Indira Gandhi's office as prime minister. She was afraid that the agitation is for throwing her out from power. There was no evidence to show that, but some CPI people, supported by then Soviet Union, thought, and they actually manipulated some people inside the Congress to convince or to mislead Indira Gandhi that the presidential election, in which actually she signed the nomination paper of the candidate chosen by the Congress Working Committee, then Mr. Sanjeev Reddy, former speaker. She thought that the Congress Working Committee is engineering some sort of coup to throw her out of power, and the Soviet Union, as well as the persons supporting Soviet Union inside the Congress, like Vaila Ravi and other people, also convinced her that there is a conspiracy against her, and she was taken as well. Actually, she became a part of that manipulations and declared emergency in the dead of the night. The then leader of the Congress party, Mr. Siddhartha Shankar Ray, actually advised her the constitutional position to declare emergency, which was actually an emergency against her holding the power. There was no emergency as far as the country is concerned. And I wrote the leaflet, and it was published by as part of a journal called Nirnayam, which was being published by a radical group of congressmen led by Mr. M.A. John from Ernakulam. So I was arrested, charged under the Defense of India rules. Many people were charged not under an DIR, but as part of the MISA. That is, they did not do anything against law, but as a precaution, what we call the Internal Security, Maintenance of Internal Security Act, MISA. Most of the leaders of the opposition then in parliament were arrested under MISA. There was no charge against them. It was what we call a precautionary measure, which is not supported by any real democracy, because under MISA, the first casualty will be the freedom of speech and expression. And I and my colleagues who published that leaflet were charged under DIR, Defense of India rules. Which
Sir, you say that the leaflet was
actually,
published by Sir, you say that the leaflet was published by radical group of
And
Congress
yes,
people themselves.
the leaflet
So,
was published as part of a journal known as Nirnayam, which was being published by the radical group inside the Congress, led by M.A. John. I was closely associated with them, particularly their so-called intellectual activities, like publishing the journal, supplying this ideological support to them. We, or that group, actually formed part of the Congress who wanted to use Congress for the reformation of the country as an instrument, not as an idol to be worshipped. One of the big slogans which they propagated during emergency, immediately before emergency, was that party is an instrument to be used, not an idol to be worshipped.
okay.
Accordingly, they published the leaflet, particularly among congressmen, which infuriated the powers that be inside the Congress, and they supported Indira Gandhi for this imposition of emergency. And Karunakaran was in power at the time, and the
Yes.
CPI-oriented people were actually prepared. One of the leaders of the CPI, Mr. Kumaran, who was an MP, he told me that Brezhnev, the Soviet leader, has himself guaranteed Indira Gandhi that Soviet Union is ready to push 6 lakhs of soldiers in India to support her against any attempt to throw her out of power. She was
Okay.
actually carried away by this propaganda. She herself told me in a personal talk later when she came to Cochin. I asked her why you signed the nomination paper of Sanjeev Reddy, who the official candidate of the Congress, and canvassed votes for V.V. Giri, which actually turned which a landmark in the history of our country, which changed the political setup altogether. She told me that it was only then, that is 24 hours ago, she came to know that the Congress leaders were conspiring to throw her out of power, and Sanjeev Reddy was thrust as the candidate, Congress candidate for presidency against her will. She at that time had signed her papers, nomination papers, as official Congress candidate of Sanjeev Reddy, but
Okay.
canvass votes for V.V. Giri.
Yes.
That was
Yes.
actually a pakka lie, she told me, but it is not fair for a journalist to enter into some what we call argument in a personal talk. We were talking in Ernakulam guest house, and from my face, she would have understood that I was not taking her story without any, with only with a pinch of salt, and I was not believing. I did not believe. And later on, because Giri won and Sanjeev Reddy was defeated,
Hmm.
she thought that everyone in India was supporting her, and she became almost some type of a dictator and
Okay.
passed several laws. The parliament passed the amendment to constitution. Parliament, which was elected for 5 years, themselves by amending the constitution, extended the period to 6 years, and
Okay.
that extended period was used for uh, passing some laws, giving immunity to the prime minister before or after emergency from prosecution, etc. It was almost a dictatorship. And later on, she herself said that not a leaf moved before in parliament or outside when this constitution was amended. It went into her head, and she lost her balance, almost became a dictator. This Nijalingappa and old Baraji Desai and old leaders of the Congress, she thought had absolutely no power, she can do anything. In fact, that changed the whole history of India. And she, according to me, actually threw to wind all decency and norms of the parliamentary democracy.
So,
So
so
we
there is
published this leaflet.
So before going to the details, I want to ask you what was in the leaflet which you wrote, which was so provocative? Was it a direct criticism of the emergency, or you are appealing to people to oppose emergency? What was it in the
It was
leaflet?
the crux of the matter was that the whole emergency was declared to protect her position. There was absolutely no reason to declare emergency because the internal security is threatened. Just a few weeks back, an election was conducted in Gujarat. The only thing that happened was that Moraji's Congress, that time they are the so-called pro-Soviet people were saying syndicate Congress, they got the majority. And also the Supreme Court had, no, the Election Commission had declared, I think it was not the Election Commission, the court had declared invalid her election because she used some government servants, I don't remember the exact name, like for her election work, which was against the law. That was found to be true by the allegation was found to be true by the court, and her election was declared invalid. We wrote in the leaflet asking congressmen, particularly led by Chandrasekhar, to revolt against this anti-democratic functioning of Indira Gandhi and her coteries, particularly Siddharth Sangarai, who advised her to declare emergency because the internal security is under threat. We argued that if there was a threat, how was the election conducted? Everything, change of power in Gujarat took place normally, smoothly, and there was no need. Before that, there was a strike that was also uh, not disturbing the internal security. So the whole exercise is to protect her office as prime minister. That was the leaflet, and openly it wanted the workers as well as students to revolt against that emergency regime. So strictly speaking, there was two kind of emergency at that time, and the leaflet was against a law because it was actually called upon people, workers, etc., to revolt against that emergency regime, which was definitely an illegal act under the Defense of India rules. But the Defense of India rules actually had a provision saying that it shall be a valid defense if the defendants prove that the disputed matter had been published before the emergency came to power. In fact, I found out that provision when I was in jail. I was jailed for 2 months along with this Parivartanwadi group, which the Congress radical group. And I found in when I was in jail, I asked my father to bring a copy of that DAR, and I found that there is a provision there saying that uh, it shall be a valid defense for the defendants if they prove that the controversial leaflet or the disputed matter was published before the act came into force. Actually, they had done it, and we circulated it particularly and sent copies of it to the Congress leaders because it was mostly addressing them to revolt in support of Chandrasekhar against emergency. So there was legally a cause for charging us, and they arrested us, and we got bail from the High Court late after 2 months in jail without trial, and before the trial began, after 2 months we were given bail. And Justice Krishnayar made a strange observation in this election case against Indira Gandhi, saying that she can continue as a prime minister, and for that he supported an article saying that anybody can be prime minister or minister for 6 months, and the law says only that they should get elected to parliament or assembly, as the case may be, if they are not elected members. Actually, that provision applied only to the members who were elected when they were holding office, not for new members. But Krishnayer's interpretation was absolutely wrong because she succeeded and nobody, not even a jurist, argued that Krishnayar is wrong in interpreting that anybody can be made a prime minister or a minister using this provision, that anybody can become a minister for 6 months. They get elected within 6 months. If that is accepted, the very principle of responsible government will be not there. Why? You can choose 6 persons, one person getting elected just before 6 months, and another person being taking oath as prime minister or minister. So if you have got 6 persons, the president can choose prime ministers without getting elected to the parliament at all. So the interpretation was wrong. I still stand by that. But I am surprised that the jurists, as well as the media, has not made this point yet. This side was wrong because success of Indira Gandhi and her candidate, not her candidate, she supported Giri, and success of Giri in the presidential election changed the situation, and everybody became afraid to oppose her. And she openly said in parliament that not a leaf was moved when emergency was declared, and people accepted that. That was wrong interpretation, and Kushayar's interpretation is still wrong. There must be an academic discussion as well as in the media. People should understand that this is a wrong interpretation.
Okay, sir. Since you were part of the radical Congress movements, what do
Who?
you think was the role of you are part of the radical Congress movement
Yes,
in
I
Kerala?
was associated with those persons, my friend M.A. John,
Yeah.
mostly in giving some theoretical support to their party and group. And
Okay.
we were propagating that Congress is an instrument that should be used for political changes. And it must not be treated as an idol for worshipping. People inside the Congress, we actually supported Chandrasekhar.
Okay.
Chandrasekhar, who became later the president of the Janata Party.
Yeah, another party.
He was
Yes.
chosen as a president. I was in Delhi when he was chosen as a president. He was actually worried and walking here and there like an animal inside a cage. When I was there at that time, my friend Sundarechanar was also there in the North Avenue. And I told him, you don't know your importance. Exactly when we were returning and we were in train, I found that he had been elected as a president of the Janata Party
Okay.
because
So,
JP and Ajay Kriplani supported them,
okay.
supported
My
him.
point is, sir. My point is that I was told that emergency was the time when Mrs. Gandhi almost allowed Sanjay Gandhi to be an extra constitutional power, and that is
That is
what,
true.
yeah, that is
Yes,
what you totally the whole situation went totally wrong because of Sanjay Gandhi and the cronies around him. What in Delhi I heard is the palace guard took over Mrs. Gandhi's
it is true.
activity.
It is true. Sanjay Gandhi acted as an extra constitutional authority, interfered with the administration. I myself had a very miserable experience when I was in Delhi. I told you that we were there to meet Chandrasekhar and asking and discussing about these things. My friend Sundaresh Nair, who later became uh, he was a Janata leader at that time and
Yeah.
chairman of the housing board, elected
Mm.
when Marxists were ruling after Karnagaran's defeat. When we went, he broke his leg, not leg, fingers in the leg when we were walking on the road in Delhi, and one went to a dispensary there, a government municipal dispensary for dressing that. I found a notice there that only persons bringing a certificate of vasectomy will be treated there. This was the situation as Delhi. I am giving you an example. And Sanjay Gandhi, the one good thing that he did in his life is this family supporting family planning, because of these people like Rajan who became minister had absolutely no clear vision about family planning or birth control, and he actually destroyed the whole setup of birth control in India. They themselves did not know that. They claimed themselves to be the disciples of Dr. Lohia. They did not know that Dr. Lohia is a first person, politician in India, who wanted birth control for liberation of women.
Yes.
It was introduced, and they propagated that it is an economic measure. It was not an economic measure alone. The ladies are compelled to bear children even against their own will, because there was no birth control.
Yeah.
And I was surprised to see this notice pasted in the notice board in that clinic. Because how can we, coming from Kerala, produce this certificate for vasectomy? Of course, they did not insist on our case, because we explained the matter, and the doctor there was a gentleman, and he dressed Sudarshan as like, I called a nurse and dressed his wounds. This was the situation. In UP, I was told that the Sanjay Gandhi's some gundas and his henchmen were forcing people into the lorry, big lorry, and taking to some clinic to compel them for this vasectomy operation. It was all wrong, but as a policy, birth control must have been supported. And these Lohia people, Lohia was only decent intellectual, others were all cronies of his without knowing, and they were supporting Rajaran against birth control. Birth control, as I told you, Lohia is the only leader, perhaps at that time, in India or even in abroad, who supported birth control as a measure of liberating women also. What a tragedy that the young girls will have to bear this burden of delivering children, pregnancy without their own, and in most cases they won't have the sexual pressure even.
Okay. Yeah, sir. So, what about the resistance? Because what I remember about Kerala is that there was hardly any resistance in Kerala. Most of the people enjoyed emergency because the trains and buses were running on time. Government officers were working full time without any problems. So, what
It
was
is
the
true.
resistance?
The majority of people supported emergency. There is no use in hiding that fact. Majority of people, middle class particularly, were happy that the government servants were doing some job. Usually they will come to the office, read a magazine, go home, and nobody to question because of the misuse of the organizational strength they have got. And they themselves said that every 5 years, salaries will have to be revised. Where is the law? Where is the statute? And nobody, the agriculture workers, the farm labor, they don't get anything. And these people, because of their control of the party, and there is not much discussion about another fact, the party will increase the salary and emoluments every 5 years and collect a part of that share of increase in income to the party.
Yes.
In Western countries, Western democracy, even now there are Chamber of Commerce, etc., supporting capitalists, etc., for some party. But here, the labor is not actually labor. They were oppressors, part of the government. Simply because of the organized force, they could control, and the first salary will be paid to the party. This was a situation nobody discusses. This is a fact. That is why the NGO union, etc., even now that is happening. Even now, because